My husband promised he'd be home for our anniversary dinner. Instead, I watched through the restaurant window as he laughed with his ex across the street. My phone buzzed, the fertility clinic confirming I was pregnant with his child. I ordered champagne, took a photo of my divorce papers beside it, and texted him, "Congratulations. You're free, and you're a father." Then I walked out of both the restaurant and his life. I'd been sitting at Luminaire, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, for exactly 4 to 7 minutes. The candle in the center of the table had already burned down an inch, and the ice in my water glass had long since melted. Our reservation was for 7 p.m. James was never late, except for today, our third wedding anniversary. "Would you like to order, Mrs. Reynolds? Or perhaps another drink while you wait?" The waiter's sympathetic smile made my cheeks burn. "Just 5 more minutes," I said, forcing a smile as I checked my phone again. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I'd spent weeks planning this evening. The reservation at Luminaire required connections and a waiting list. I'd chosen a new dress, emerald green, James's favorite color. I'd even prepared what I would say when I told him about the baby. Our baby. The one we'd been trying for over the past year. The hostess approached with another glass of water, her eyes avoiding mine. She was embarrassed for me. Everyone was. The woman dining alone on her anniversary stood up by her husband. That's when I saw him. Across the street, through the window of Celine's bistro, sat James. His back was to me, but I would recognize that tailored suit and the way he ran his hand through his hair anywhere. He was laughing, leaning forward toward someone. I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my water. I moved closer to the window, ignoring the curious glances from other diners. And there she was. Eliza Cohen. His ex-girlfriend. The brilliant surgeon who'd left him 5 years ago for a fellowship in London. She was even more beautiful than in the photos he still kept in his desk drawer, the ones he thought I didn't know about. My phone vibrated in my hand. I looked down, expecting an apologetic text from James with some elaborate excuse. Instead, it was an email from Dr. Mason's fertility clinic. "Congratulations, Mrs. Reynolds. Your blood test this morning confirmed that you are approximately 5 weeks pregnant. Please call our office to schedule your first prenatal appointment." 5 weeks pregnant. With James's child. While he sat across the street, completely enthralled by his ex. As I watched, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Eliza's face lit up as she opened it, revealing what looked like a delicate gold bracelet. She immediately put it on, admiring how it looked on her wrist. The anniversary gift that should have been mine. Memories flashed through my mind. Our wedding day, when he'd looked at me with such promise in his eyes. The house we'd bought together. The nursery we'd talked about decorating someday. The someday that was now here, but he wasn't. Something shifted inside me. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I returned to our table and picked up my purse, extracting my wallet. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Reynolds?" the waiter asked. "Actually, no," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "But it will be. I'd like a bottle of your finest champagne, please." "To celebrate your anniversary?" he asked hopefully. "To celebrate my divorce," I replied. While waiting for the champagne, I made 2 calls. First to my lawyer, Alexandra, who'd been warning me about James's suspicious behavior for months. "I need divorce papers drawn up immediately," I said when she answered. "Sophia, what happened? Are you okay?" "I've never been better," I replied, watching James touch Eliza's hand across the street. "How quickly can you get them to me?" Alexandra, ever efficient, promised to email a preliminary agreement within the hour. My second call was to the Four Seasons to book their luxury suite. On James's credit card, of course. The champagne arrived, a beautiful bottle of Dom Perignon. I took a photo of it next to my phone, which displayed the email from the fertility clinic. Then I waited for Alexandra's email. When it arrived, I downloaded the divorce papers and placed them prominently beside the champagne. The perfect composition. I took another photo. As I was contemplating my next move, James finally texted, "Running late." Work emergency. Be there in 20. I smiled, feeling strangely calm as I composed my response, attaching the photo of the champagne and divorce papers. Congratulations. You're free, and you're a father. Don't bother coming to Luminaire. I won't be here. I left cash on the table, enough for the champagne and a generous tip, gathered my purse, and walked out with my head held high. In the reflection of the restaurant's glass door, I caught a glimpse of myself. Shoulders back, chin up. I didn't look like a woman whose heart had just been broken. I looked like a woman who had finally broken free. The night air felt electric against my skin as I stepped out of Luminaire. My phone was already buzzing with James's calls, but I silenced it and slipped it into my purse. Let him panic. Let him wonder. The power had shifted, and for once, I wasn't the one left in the dark. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver our home address, soon to be just his home. During the 20-minute ride, I mentally catalogued everything I needed to take with me. Not much, I decided. Material things could be replaced. My dignity couldn't. As the taxi pulled into our driveway, I noticed all the lights were off. Perfect. I had time to gather my essentials before the inevitable confrontation. I paid the driver and walked up the stone path to the front door, fumbling slightly with my key as unexpected tears blurred my vision. Get it together, Sophia, I whispered to myself. You don't cry for men who laugh with their exes on your anniversary. Inside, I moved with purpose. First, my personal documents, birth certificate, passport, financial records, all neatly filed in the home office. I grabbed the folder labeled Sophia, important, and stuffed it into my largest handbag. Next, the jewelry my grandmother had left me, which I kept in a small lockbox in the closet. Finally, my laptop and backup drive containing all my photos and memories I didn't want to lose. I was about to leave the office when my eyes fell on a leather-bound recipe book on the shelf. James's grandmother's recipes. The only thing he knew how to cook from. He'd spent countless Sundays perfecting her coq au vin, insisting it needed to be just right. I hesitated only a moment before grabbing it and adding it to my bag. Consider it alimony, I muttered with a small, vindictive smile. In our bedroom, I quickly packed a week's worth of clothes, not bothering with anything fancy. Where I was going, I wouldn't need designer labels or stilettos. I was halfway through gathering my toiletries when I heard my phone buzz with a text. Despite my better judgment, I looked. James, where are you? I've been waiting at Luminaire for 30 minutes. The hostess said you left. I stared at the message, almost admiring his audacity. He wasn't even acknowledging that I'd seen him with Eliza or that I knew about the champagne and divorce papers. Classic James, rewriting reality to suit his narrative. Another text came through before I could respond. James, are you okay? Should I be worried? I laughed out loud, the sound echoing strangely in the empty house. Now he was worried? Where was that concern when he was buying gold bracelets for Eliza? With steady fingers, I booked the presidential suite at the Four Seasons using his credit card. $4,000 a night seemed appropriate for the occasion. I added a note for champagne and strawberries to be waiting in the room. Might as well go out in style. As I zipped up my suitcase, memories ambushed me from every corner of the room. James carrying me across the threshold after our honeymoon. Late Sunday mornings reading in bed. The night we'd decided to try for a baby, his eyes so full of what I thought was love. Had any of it been real? Or had I been a convenient placeholder while he waited for Eliza to return? My hand drifted to my stomach. At least one thing was real. The life growing inside me. A life that would have a mother who knew her worth. My phone buzzed again. James, I'm coming home. We need to talk. Time to leave. I grabbed my bags and took one last look around the bedroom. 3 years of marriage, reduced to a suitcase and a handbag. It should have felt more momentous somehow. In the kitchen, I wrote a short note and left it on the counter. The divorce papers weren't a bluff. Signed them. I placed my house key beside it, a small, silver period to the end of our story. As I was about to walk out the front door, my lawyer Alexandra called. Are you sure about this, Sophia? She asked when I answered. Divorce is a big step. Maybe you should sleep on it. I've been sleeping on it for 3 years, Alex, I replied, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. I just finally woke up. Where are you staying tonight? Do you need a place? I've got it covered. The Four Seasons. Presidential Suite. She whistled. Going out with a bang, I see. And charging it to his card, I added, climbing into the waiting Uber I'd called. Consider it the cost of making a fool out of me. The preliminary papers I sent are just a start, Alexandra continued, her voice shifting to professional mode. We'll need to discuss division of assets, the house, and now with the pregnancy. The pregnancy changes nothing, I interrupted. I don't want his money for the baby. I don't want him to have any claim on us. That's not how family law works, Sophia. He has rights as the father. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. We'll figure it out. Right now, I just need space to think. Call me tomorrow, she said gently. And Sophia? I'm proud of you. As the Uber pulled away from the curb, I saw headlights turning onto our street. James, rushing home to damage control. Too late. I took out my phone and opened his message thread. I scrolled past his concerned texts to my earlier one with the champagne and divorce papers photo. Under it, I typed one more message. I'll have my lawyer contact yours tomorrow. Don't try to find me tonight. Then I turned off my phone completely and watched the house, our house, disappear from view. 5 years earlier, I never would have imagined myself in a presidential suite contemplating divorce. Back then, I was Sophia Mitchell, marketing director at Mitchell & Sons, my family's modest but respectable advertising firm. I was ambitious, independent, and, according to my mother, criminally single at 27. Then came the Hartwell Foundation charity auction. Lot number 47, the auctioneer announced. An original 1964 Beatles promotional poster, signed by all 4 members. We'll start the bidding at $5,000. My hand shot up immediately. I'd been waiting all evening for this item. My father was turning 60 that month, and he'd often spoken about seeing the Beatles in concert as a teenager. This would be the perfect gift. $5,000 from the lady in green, the auctioneer nodded. Do I hear $5,500? Another hand went up across the room. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit. Dark hair, strong jawline, confident posture. $5,500 from the gentleman. $6,000. I raised my paddle again, throwing a competitive glance toward my opponent. He caught my eye and smiled, a smile that somehow managed to be both apologetic and determined. The bidding continued. $7,000. $8,000. $10,000. The crowd's attention bounced between us like a tennis match. At $15,000, well beyond what I'd planned to spend, I hesitated. Going once for $15,000. I bit my lip, calculating whether I could justify spending that much on a birthday gift. Going twice. The man with the dark hair looked my way, then lowered his paddle. Sold to the lady in green for $15,000. After settling my payment, I felt a tap on my shoulder. You fought admirably for that poster, came a deep voice behind me. I turned to find myself face to face with my bidding rival. Up close, he was even more striking, warm brown eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners, a small scar above his right eyebrow that somehow added character rather than detracting from his looks. James Reynolds, he said, extending his hand. Sophia Mitchell, I replied, shaking it. And thank you for letting me win. He raised an eyebrow. Let you win? I assure you, I surrendered out of financial prudence, not chivalry. Either way, my father will be thrilled. It's for his 60th birthday. He saw them at Shea Stadium in '65. James's expression softened. That's actually a much better reason than mine. I just wanted it for my office. Well, now I feel bad. Don't, he said, smiling that same disarming smile. But perhaps you could make it up to me with dinner sometime. That dinner led to more dinners. Lunches. Weekend trips to the coast. James was everything I thought I wanted. Successful, intelligent, attentive. The CEO of Reynolds Media Group. He moved in circles far more prestigious than mine. He introduced me to a world of private jets, exclusive restaurants, and people whose names I'd only read in magazines. I've never brought anyone to the Reynolds summer home, he told me 3 months in, as we drove up to a sprawling beachfront property in the Hamptons. Not since Eliza. Ah, Eliza. The ghost who haunted our relationship from the beginning. Who's Eliza? I asked, trying to sound casual. James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. My ex. We were together for 4 years. She left for a surgical fellowship in London. He said it matter-of-factly, but I caught the edge in his voice. Later that weekend, I found a framed photo in his desk drawer, James with a stunning woman, both in scrubs, her dark hair pulled back, both laughing. They looked right together. I put the photo back and never mentioned it. Over the next few months, I learned more about Eliza through casual comments from James's friends. How brilliant she was. How she and James had been the power couple of their medical school, before he switched to business. How everyone had expected them to get married. She broke his heart, his college friend Mark told me at a dinner party, after too many drinks. Left for London without even discussing it with him. He was going to propose that weekend. I should have seen it then, I was the rebound. The consolation prize. But James was persuasive. 8 months after the auction, he proposed at the top of the Empire State Building, presenting a diamond ring that could have funded a small country. You've brought light back into my life, Sophia, he said, down on one knee. Marry me. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Our wedding was featured in society pages. The Reynolds family had connections, influence. My family looked out of place among the senators and CEOs who attended. My father, in his rented tuxedo, trying not to look impressed. My mother, overwhelmed by the opulence, drinking champagne too quickly. James's mother took my hands at the reception, her diamond bracelet catching the light. You're not what we expected for James, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. But you're lovely, dear. What they expected was Eliza. I understood that now. Our honeymoon in Bali was picture perfect. Our new house in Westchester was a designer's dream. On paper, my life had become a fairy tale. But 6 months into our marriage, at a hospital fundraiser, I overheard 2 women in the bathroom. Did you hear Eliza Cohen is moving back from London? Finished her fellowship early. Really? Does James Reynolds know? They were so perfect together before she left. I always thought he married the Mitchell girl on the rebound. Sweet, but not exactly Eliza's caliber. I stayed in the store until they left, my heart pounding. That night, James came home late. Work emergency, he explained, kissing my forehead absently. His collar smelled like perfume I didn't wear. I was halfway through my room service breakfast when someone pounded on my hotel suite door. Sophia. Open the damn door. James. Of course. I glanced at my phone, 14 missed calls since I'd turned it back on this morning. I took another bite of my croissant, chewing slowly. Let him wait. I know you're in there. Another round of pounding. The front desk confirmed it. I sighed, setting down my coffee and tightening the belt of my hotel robe. Security would be up soon if he continued making a scene. I walked to the door but didn't open it. What do you want, James? I called through the door. What do I? He sounded incredulous. You send me a picture of divorce papers, tell me you're pregnant, and disappear? What the hell is going on? I think the picture explained everything quite clearly. Open the door, Sophia. We need to talk face to face. I hesitated, then pressed my palm against the cool wood of the door. I don't think we do. Please, his voice softened, taking on that persuasive tone he used in board meetings when he needed to convince someone to see things his way. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. James stood in the hallway, still wearing yesterday's suit, now rumpled. His hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He'd never looked less like the polished CEO he prided himself on being. Thank you, he said, stepping forward. I blocked his path. 5 minutes. That's it. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up even more. Can I at least come in? Unless you want the entire floor to hear our business. Reluctantly, I stepped aside. He entered, his eyes immediately cataloguing the room, the half-eaten breakfast, my small suitcase, the prenatal vitamins on the nightstand. So it's true, he said, nodding toward the vitamins. You're pregnant. Yes. When were you going to tell me? I almost laughed. Last night. At our anniversary dinner. Before I saw you with Eliza. His jaw tightened. That's what this is about? You saw me with Eliza and jumped straight to divorce. Don't insult my intelligence, James. I saw you give her what I assume was my anniversary gift. That wasn't. Save it, I interrupted. This isn't just about last night. It's about the last 3 years. The late nights. The perfume on your clothes. The way you say her name in your sleep. His eyes widened at that last part. I don't. You do, I said quietly. At least you're consistent. James moved toward the window, his back to me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The bracelet wasn't your anniversary gift, he finally said. Your gift is at home. In my sock drawer. And that's supposed to make everything better? You were still with her on our anniversary. He turned to face me. It wasn't romantic. We were discussing business. On our anniversary? In a romantic bistro? Try again, James. Reynolds Media is partnering with Boston General on their new medical wing. Eliza is heading the project. It was a business dinner. I crossed my arms. That you couldn't reschedule? Or invite your wife to? He stopped, seeming to realize there was no good answer. I should have told you. I know that. But this reaction is extreme, even for you. Even for me. My voice rose. What's that supposed to mean? You know what I mean, he said, frustration edging into his tone. You've always been insecure about Eliza. Always jumping to conclusions. And you've always given me reason to. 3 years of marriage, James, and I've always felt like I'm competing with a ghost. He shook his head. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is making me feel like I'm crazy for noticing how you light up when someone mentions her name. What's not fair is finding out from other people that you were planning to propose to her before she left. James looked genuinely surprised. Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true? He hesitated, then nodded once. I moved to the bathroom, needing a moment away from his gaze. When I returned, he was holding the pregnancy test I'd left in the trash. How long have you known? He asked quietly. I got the confirmation yesterday. And you were just going to leave? Without even discussing it? His voice hardened. You're carrying my child, Sophia. Don't, I held up a hand. Don't use this baby to manipulate me. It's not manipulation to point out that there's more at stake than just our marriage. There is, I agreed. There's my self-respect. There's the example I want to set for our child about not staying where you're not valued. James took a step toward me, his expression softening. I do value you, Sophia. This thing with Eliza, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I challenged. He looked away. It's complicated. I laughed, the sound hollow. Of course it is. Eliza and I weren't on a date last night, he said firmly. The truth is, she came to warn me. That caught me off guard. Warn you about what? Reynolds Media is in trouble. There's an investigation into some of our accounting practices that predated my leadership but that I should have uncovered. Eliza found out through hospital channels. I stared at him, trying to determine if this was just another lie. Why would she warn you? Because despite everything, we're still friends. And because her father sits on the board that's investigating us. Before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. Ms. Mitchell? This is hotel security. We've had noise complaints. Is everything all right? James looked at me, a silent plea in his eyes. Everything's fine, I called back. My husband was just leaving. Sophia, please, James whispered. Think of our child. I opened the door. The security guard, a tall man with kind eyes, stood in the hallway. Mr. Reynolds was just on his way out, I said firmly. James looked from me to the guard, then back again. His shoulders slumped in defeat. This isn't over, he said quietly as he stepped into the hallway. We're having a baby, Sophia. That changes everything. After the door closed behind him, I leaned against it, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. No, I whispered. It changes nothing. I hadn't spoken to my sister Maya in almost 2 years. Not since she'd walked away from our family business to pursue her artistic passions in Brooklyn. Not since she told me at my own anniversary party last year that my marriage seemed more like a merger than a love match. Not since I'd defended James and accused her of jealousy. Yet here I was, standing outside her walk-up apartment building in Williamsburg, suitcase in hand. I pressed the buzzer for apartment 3B, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Hello. Maya's voice crackled through the intercom. It's me, I said, then realized she might not recognize my voice after so long. Sophia. Silence. Then, seriously. Can I come up? Please. More silence. Then the door buzzed open. Maya was waiting in her doorway when I reached the 3rd floor. Her hair was shorter now, dyed a vibrant purple, and she wore paint-splattered overalls. She looked nothing like the polished marketing executive she'd been 2 years ago. You look terrible, she said by way of greeting. I laughed, unexpected tears springing to my eyes. Thanks. You look colorful. She didn't smile. What are you doing here, Sophia? I left James, I said simply. Her expression didn't change, but she stepped aside to let me enter. Her apartment was small but bright, with large windows overlooking the street. Canvases in various stages of completion leaned against every wall. The air smelled of turpentine and coffee. You were right, I said, setting down my suitcase. About everything. About James. About my marriage. Maya crossed her arms. What happened? I told her everything, finding James with Eliza, the pregnancy, the divorce papers, his confrontation at the hotel this morning. Jesus, she muttered when I finished. What a mess. Yeah. And you're really pregnant? I nodded, placing my hand instinctively on my stomach. 5 weeks. Maya's expression softened slightly. Sit down before you fall down. You look exhausted. I sank onto her paint-stained couch. I didn't know where else to go. What about Mom and Dad? They just tell me to work it out. You know how they are about marriage. Maya snorted. Yeah, 40 years of polite tolerance does give them certain opinions. She disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a mug of herbal tea. No caffeine for you anymore. I accepted the tea gratefully. Since when do you keep herbal tea? Since Danny moved in. She's a health nut. Danny. Maya raised an eyebrow. My girlfriend? For the past year? The one I told Mom about at Christmas. I winced. No one told me. Would you have cared? The question stung because it was fair. I'd been so wrapped up in my life with James, in trying to be the perfect Reynolds wife, that I'd let my family relationships wither. I'm sorry, I said quietly. For everything. For not being there. For what I said at the party. Maya perched on the arm of a nearby chair. You told me I was jealous of your perfect life. That I was throwing away my potential on finger painting. I cringed at the memory. I was wrong. And apparently, my life wasn't so perfect after all. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 2 years' estrangement heavy between us. So what's your plan? Maya finally asked. Besides hiding out in my apartment. I don't know, I admitted. I have the divorce papers drawn up. I have a lawyer. But beyond that. I shrugged helplessly. What about work? Are you going back to the family business? I hadn't thought that far ahead. After marrying James, I'd left Mitchell & Sons to become a consultant, which really meant planning charity events for Reynolds Media and making appearances at James's side. I don't know if Dad would even want me back. Maya rolled her eyes. Are you kidding? He's been keeping your office like a shrine. Besides, since I left, they've been struggling with the digital side of things. Just then, the apartment door opened and a tall woman with close-cropped blonde hair walked in, carrying groceries. Babe, they were out of that weird mushroom coffee you like, so I got. She stopped when she saw me. Oh. Hello. Danny, this is my sister Sophia, Maya said. Sophia, this is Daniela Reeves, my girlfriend. Nice to finally meet you, Danny said, setting down the groceries and extending her hand. I've heard a lot about you. All terrible, I'm sure, I said, shaking her hand. Mostly, Danny agreed with a smile that took the sting out of the words. Maya mentioned you're married to James Reynolds. I'm in the process of becoming unmarried to him, actually. Good timing, Danny said, exchanging a look with Maya. What does that mean? I asked. Danny glanced at Maya again, who nodded slightly. I'm a corporate attorney, Danny explained. My firm is representing several whistleblowers in a case against Reynolds Media Group. My stomach dropped. What kind of case? Financial fraud. Misappropriation of client funds. Possibly tax evasion. Danny's professional demeanor softened. I'm sorry. I know this must be a shock. So James hadn't been lying about that part, at least. I thought back to our conversation at the hotel. He'd said the accounting issues predated his leadership. But was that true? There's something else you should know, Maya said, her expression serious. Mitchell & Sons shares a major client with Reynolds Media, Pinnacle Industries. Dad's biggest account, I nodded. What about it? Last month, Pinnacle suddenly pulled 30% of their business from Mitchell & Sons and gave it to Reynolds Media. No explanation. Dad was blindsided. I felt sick. You think James had something to do with that? I think, Maya said carefully, that your husband has been undermining our family business while you've been planning his charity galas. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped my mug tighter, trying to stay anchored. Sophia. Danny's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? I need to talk to Dad, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. I need to know what James has done. My father's office hadn't changed in the decade since I'd first started working at Mitchell & Sons. Same mahogany desk. Same leather chair with the worn right armrest. Same photo of Mom, Maya, and me at my college graduation. But Dad looked different, older, more tired than I remembered. So, he said, leaning back in his chair, you're finally home. After leaving Maya's apartment, I'd driven straight to the Mitchell & Sons offices in Midtown. It was Sunday, but I knew Dad would be working. He always worked Sundays. I should have come sooner, I admitted. He studied me for a moment. Maya called. Said you're leaving James. Yes. And that you're pregnant. I nodded. Complicated situation, he said, in his characteristic understatement. Dad, I took a deep breath. Maya said Pinnacle Industries pulled part of their business from us and gave it to Reynolds Media. Is that true? His expression hardened. 3 months ago. 38% of their marketing budget. No warning, no explanation. Why didn't you tell me? He gave me a look. Would you have believed anything negative about your husband's company? The truth of that stung. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Dad waved his hand dismissively. You're here now. That's what matters. I leaned forward. I need to understand what happened with Pinnacle. And I need to know everything about Reynolds Media's involvement. For the next hour, Dad walked me through the details. Pinnacle had been a loyal Mitchell & Sons client for 15 years. Then suddenly, Reynolds Media had swooped in with a proposal that undercut our rates by nearly 20%. Rates that would be impossible to maintain while delivering quality work. It doesn't make business sense, Dad concluded. They'll lose money on the account at those rates. Unless the goal wasn't profit, I said slowly. What if the goal was to hurt Mitchell and Sons? Dad looked at me sharply. You think James did this deliberately? I don't know, I admitted. But I'm going to find out. I spent the rest of the afternoon poring over documents, spreadsheets, and emails. By evening, I had the beginnings of a theory, but I needed more information I couldn't access from the Mitchell and Sons offices. I needed someone on the inside of Reynolds Media. Back at Maya's apartment, I outlined what I'd learned and what I suspected to both her and Danny. So you think James used inside information about your family's business practices to specifically target Pinnacle? Danny asked, her lawyer's mind quickly grasping the implications. It's the only explanation that makes sense. The timing, the specific rate structure, the fact that he targeted our largest client, he knew exactly where to hit us to cause maximum damage. But why? Maya asked. What does James gain by hurting Mitchell and Sons? I shook my head. I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out. We need more information, Danny said, already in strategic mode. Financial records, emails, meeting minutes, anything that might show intent. I might know someone who could help, I said, pulling out my phone. James's executive assistant, Rachel. She's always been friendly to me. You think she'd risk her job? Maya looked skeptical. I think she has reason to be unhappy with James. I'd overheard enough conversations to know that Rachel was underpaid and overworked. It's worth a try. To my surprise, Rachel agreed to meet me for coffee the next morning. When she arrived at the small cafe 2 blocks from Reynolds Media headquarters, she looked nervous but determined. I can't stay long, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. He checks my calendar. Thank you for coming, I said. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I heard about what happened, she said. The divorce papers. Everyone at the office is talking. I winced. Great. For what it's worth, she added, I think you're doing the right thing. He's been, she stopped herself. Been what, Rachel? She sighed. Different. Since she came back. Eliza. Rachel nodded. But that's not why I agreed to meet you. It's about the company. Things aren't right, Sophia. The numbers don't add up. Accounts are being shifted around. Partners are asking questions. I leaned forward. Tell me about Pinnacle Industries. Rachel's eyes widened. How do you know about that? It's my family's client. Or was, until Reynolds Media poached them. That was his pet project, she said quietly. He handled everything personally. Wouldn't let anyone else near the account. Do you know why? She glanced around nervously before pulling a USB drive from her purse. I made copies of some emails. Meeting notes. The original proposal to Pinnacle. I don't know what it all means, but it didn't feel right. I stared at the drive. Rachel, this could cost you your job. Maybe, she agreed. But I've been updating my resume anyway. After Rachel left, I took the USB drive straight to Danny, who spent hours reviewing its contents with the precision only a corporate attorney could muster. This is definitely problematic, she said finally, looking up from her laptop. James explicitly targeted Pinnacle to damage Mitchell and Sons. His emails to the board make that clear. But why? I asked again. What does he gain? According to these projections, Danny pointed to a spreadsheet. If Mitchell and Sons loses enough major clients, their valuation drops significantly, which makes them a prime acquisition target. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He was trying to acquire my family's company? Without telling me. It gets worse, Danny said grimly. The funding for this acquisition was coming from CohenMed Investments. CohenMed. I repeated slowly. As in. Eliza Cohen's family company, Danny confirmed. It looks like they were planning a joint venture. Just then, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Sophia Mitchell, a woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Eliza Cohen. We need to talk. I chose the location carefully, the Reynolds Media Group conference room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. This had always been James's power room, where he closed his biggest deals. Today, it would be where his plans unraveled. Are you sure about this? Maya asked, straightening my blazer as we stood in the elevator. I nodded, one hand resting protectively on my still flat stomach. Absolutely. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor of Reynolds Media. James's assistant Rachel gave me a subtle nod as we passed her desk. They're all in there, she whispered. The entire board. Perfect, I replied. The conversation with Eliza Cohen the day before had been illuminating. Far from the villain I'd imagined, she'd revealed herself to be another of James's pawns, manipulated by half-truths and false promises into a business partnership she now regretted. He told me your family wanted to sell, she'd explained during our secret meeting. That they were looking for a buyer but wouldn't sell to Reynolds directly because of bad blood between your father and his. That's completely false, I'd told her. My father built that company from nothing. He'd never sell. I'm beginning to see that James Reynolds isn't exactly an honest broker, she'd said dryly. Now, as I pushed open the conference room doors with Maya and Danny flanking me, I felt a surge of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. The room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward us, but I only focused on two, James, at the head of the table, looking stunned, and Eliza, seated to his right, her expression unreadable. Sophia. James recovered quickly, professional smile sliding into place. This is a surprise. We're in the middle of a board meeting. Yes, I know, I said calmly. About the acquisition of Mitchell & Sons Advertising. A murmur ran through the room. James's smile faltered slightly. I don't think this is the appropriate time. I think it's exactly the appropriate time, I cut him off, moving to the center of the room. Since I'm here representing Mitchell & Sons. I nodded to Maya, who distributed folders to everyone at the table. What you're holding, I continued, is evidence that Reynolds Media Group, under the direction of CEO James Reynolds, engaged in corporate espionage, fraud, and predatory pricing with the specific intent to devalue Mitchell & Sons for acquisition. The board members began flipping through the documents, expressions growing increasingly concerned. These are internal documents, James said, his voice tight. Where did you get these? That's your concern right now. I raised an eyebrow. Not the fact that you conspired to destroy your wife's family business? Not the fact that you lied to your business partners. I glanced at Eliza, who was studying the documents with narrowed eyes. Dr. Cohen, I addressed her directly. Did James tell you that the proposal outlined on page 12 includes financial projections based on illegally obtained client information from Mitchell & Sons? Eliza's head snapped up. No, he did not. Did he tell you that the valuation on page 20 is artificially deflated based on the assumption that Pinnacle Industries would completely terminate their relationship with Mitchell & Sons, a termination he orchestrated? No, she said, her voice hardening as she turned to James. He did not. James stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Sophia is clearly emotional due to our personal issues. Oh, I'm emotional all right, I agreed. But that doesn't make these documents any less real. The board chairman, Walter Griffith, cleared his throat. James, if these allegations are true. They are not, James insisted. This is a personal vendetta because Because you what? I challenged. Because you were having an affair with Dr. Cohen while trying to destroy my family's company? Is that what you were going to say? Eliza stood now too, anger flashing in her eyes. An affair? You told me you were separated. The room erupted in murmurs. Enough. James shouted, his carefully constructed facade finally cracking. This is a personal matter that has no place in a board meeting. Actually, Danny stepped forward. As counsel representing the whistleblowers within Reynolds Media, I can assure you that financial fraud is very much a board matter. Whistleblowers. James's face paled. What whistleblowers? Walter Griffith studied the documents before him, then looked up grimly. James, I think we need to continue this meeting in private. Perhaps you should step out while the board discusses these allegations. You can't be serious. James looked around the room, searching for allies. Finding none, he turned to Eliza. Tell them this is nonsense. But Eliza was already gathering her things. I'm withdrawing CohenMed's investment offer, effective immediately, she announced. And I'll be conducting a full review of all interactions between our companies. James's composure completely shattered. You can't do that. We had a deal. A deal based on lies, she replied coldly. I almost felt sorry for him as I watched his carefully constructed world collapse. Almost. Sophia, he tried again, his voice softening. Please, you don't understand what's at stake. I understand perfectly, I said. You were willing to sacrifice my family's legacy for your ambition. You used our marriage to gain inside information. You betrayed every trust one ever placed in you. I did it for us, he insisted desperately. For our future. For our child. The mention of our baby in this context ignited a fury I hadn't known I possessed. Don't you dare, I hissed. Don't you dare use our child to justify your actions. Walter Griffith stood. I think that's enough. James, please wait in your office while the board deliberates. As security arrived to escort James out, he made one last plea. Sophia, please. I love you. We can fix this. I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. Behind the polished exterior, I saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone I'd never truly known. Goodbye, James, I said softly. As the boardroom doors closed behind him, Walter Griffith turned to me. Mrs. Reynolds. Mitchell, I corrected. Sophia Mitchell. He nodded respectfully. Ms. Mitchell, the board would appreciate your continued presence as we discuss next steps. I exchanged glances with Maya and Danny, then took a seat at the table James had just vacated. I'd be happy to stay, I said. 6 months can change everything. I stood in the newly renovated offices of Mitchell & Sons, now Mitchell Digital Partners, watching the Manhattan sunrise paint the skyline gold. My expanding belly pressed against the windowsill as I sipped my herbal tea. Early meeting? Maya asked, joining me with her own steaming mug. Baby's idea, not mine, I replied, rubbing the spot where my daughter had been kicking since 5 a.m. She's going to be a morning person, I can already tell. Poor you, Maya laughed. The aftermath of the Reynolds Media Board meeting had been swift and dramatic. James had been removed as CEO pending an investigation. The company's stock had plummeted initially, but stabilized once the board appointed a respected industry veteran as interim chief executive. The divorce had been finalized in record time, with James too preoccupied with potential criminal charges to put up much resistance. In the end, he'd signed everything my lawyers put in front of him. I hadn't seen him since that day in the boardroom, though his texts still came occasionally, increasingly desperate appeals that I never answered. The last one had arrived 3 weeks ago. I made a terrible mistake. I miss you. Please let me be part of our child's life. I'd let my attorney respond to that one. The Thompson proposal is ready for review, Maya said, breaking into my thoughts. Dad made some tweaks to the creative direction, but the strategy is solid. I nodded. I'll look at it before the partner meeting. The integration of Maya back into the family business had been surprisingly seamless. Her time in the art world had given her a fresh perspective on digital marketing that our clients loved. My father, initially hesitant about my return, now proudly introduced me as the company's president at industry events. Oh, and Eliza called, Maya added casually. She wants to know if you're free for lunch next week. My friendship with Eliza Cohen had been the most unexpected development of all. After the board meeting, she'd reached out, suggesting coffee. That first awkward meeting had led to another, and another, until we'd developed a genuine rapport based on mutual respect and the shared experience of being manipulated by the same man. Tell her Tuesday works, I replied. After my doctor's appointment. Speaking of which, Maya said, checking her watch, I should get going. I'm meeting Danny for breakfast before court. Danny had been instrumental in both the Reynolds Media case and my divorce. She and Maya had moved in together last month, and there were rumors of a proposal in the works. Tell her I said thanks for the crib recommendations, I called as Maya headed for the door. The one she suggested is perfect. After Maya left, I wandered through the office, taking pride in what we'd accomplished in 6 months. Mitchell Digital Partners had not only recovered the Pinnacle Industries account but expanded it. We'd hired new talent, implemented Maya's digital strategy, and our client list had grown by 30%. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: former Reynolds Media CEO James Reynolds pleads guilty to securities fraud. Sentencing scheduled for January. I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, only a vague sadness for what might have been. I closed the alert without reading further. My assistant poked her head in. "Your 9 a.m. is here." "Thanks, Emma. Send them in." I settled behind my desk, smoothing my maternity dress. The door opened to reveal Walter Griffith, former chairman of Reynolds Media, now heading his own consulting firm. "Sophia," he greeted me warmly. "You're looking well." "Thank you, Walter. Please, sit." We spent the next hour discussing a potential partnership between his consultancy and Mitchell Digital. As he was leaving, he paused. "I ran into James last week," he said carefully. "At his lawyer's office." I kept my expression neutral. "How is he?" "Struggling," Walter said honestly. "He asked about you. And the baby." I nodded but offered nothing more. "He's lost everything, you know," Walter continued. "The company, his reputation, most of his assets after the settlements." "Not everything," I corrected gently, resting my hand on my belly. "He still has his freedom, at least until sentencing. And he'll always be this child's biological father, even if he'll never be a dad to her." Walter nodded, understanding the distinction. "You've built something impressive here, Sophia. He underestimated you." After he left, I found myself opening my personal email, where I'd filtered all of James's messages. I scrolled through them, reading his progression from arrogance to desperation to regret. The latest had arrived this morning. "I heard it's a girl. Please, Sophia. One meeting. That's all I ask." I started to type a response, then stopped. Closed the email. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, and shouldn't be. Instead, I opened the nursery design app on my tablet, smiling as I finalized the details for my daughter's room. Soft yellow walls. Glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. A bookshelf already filled with stories about brave, independent girls. My phone rang, Dad calling from the manufacturing plant he was visiting in Chicago. "How's my girl?" he asked when I answered. "Both of them, actually." "We good," I replied, smiling. "Really good." "The Mitchell women always land on their feet," he said proudly. That evening, I updated my dating profile, something I'd created on Maya's insistence, just to get back out there. I'd been reluctant at first, but eventually agreed it might be healthy to at least consider the possibility of dating again, someday. Under About Me, I wrote, "Successful businesswoman. Expectant mother. Building a life on my own terms. Not accepting applications for replacement husband or instant father, we're doing just fine on our own. But open to meeting someone who understands that the best relationships are partnerships, not mergers." I hesitated over the submit button, then decisively pressed it. 6 months ago, I'd walked out of a restaurant and a marriage that had been built on lies. Today, I walked into my future with open eyes and an open heart, but this time, entirely on my own terms.